Hello, this is David McNabb with another edition of the Creation Corner at Prescott E-News. Thanks for joining in today for the program and for tuning into Prescott E-News, the alternative for news in the Prescott area with a bit of state and national news as well. So you get it all here on Prescott E-News. We're talking about creation science. I don't have a guest today. But that's unusual. Normally there is a guest at Creation Corner. And in fact, next week I've got Mike Bird coming in, who's written a book on creation science that we're going to be talking about and exploring. So I hope you'll tune in for that next week with Mike Bird here as my guest. But today I just want to go over a few things about creation science. And if you're tuning in for the first time, creation science is the science, and there's 200 branches of science. So I'm talking about science in the broad sense that supports the biblical account of creation and the flood in the first 11 chapters of the Bible. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. A lot of people haven't really heard about creation science because they don't get it at public school for sure, and usually don't even get it at church. So that there are some exceptions to that. So if you're one of those exceptions that have learned creation science in church, good for you. I would love to meet you and find out what church you go to. But let's start off with just a few zingers, and here they are. These are T-shirt sayings that I thought were funny. A wise man once said, "I should ask my wife." All right, I know that one to be true. I dream of a society where a chicken can cross the road without its motives being questioned. Okay. Don't grow up, it's a trick. Those who can teach, those who can't pass laws about teaching. Another day with no plans to use higher math. Boy, I can relate to that one. I wasn't so good with that higher math business. To save time, let's assume I know everything. Okay, well, if you like those, tune in for more next week. All right, now we're going to start getting into what I brought here for you today. Let me show you the biology book, which is actually a 2006 Prentice Hall biology textbook that they use at Prescott High School even to this day. So you might be saying, well, why do they use such an old biology book? Well, I'm pretty sure it's because they can't afford to get new ones. But they have 3 chapters in here. That is the evolution unit that I've been going through. And I've been highlighting different things in the chapters that show that the kids are being indoctrinated into believing in evolution and deep time. Deep time is millions and billions of years by their textbook. Now a lot of times the teachers don't even believe in this the story of evolution. But they have to teach it because that's what they're required to do. And the textbook says things like dinosaurs ruled Earth for about 150 million years. Okay, and here's what kills me. They always state it like it's a fact. It's not a fact. Do you remember back in your high school days when you learned about the scientific method to establish scientific truth, which we call facts? Well, there's 4 parts to it. So let's go over them real quick. First is observation. You have to observe something. And then, based on your observation, you have to make a hypothesis why that's happening or why that's occurring, okay? And then, based on your hypothesis, you make tests to test your hypothesis to see if it's true or not. And then, finally, you have to have repeatable results. Okay. Out of those 4 things, those 4 steps to the scientific method, only hypothesis is the only one that applies to evolution. Yeah, they have hypotheses. They're changing all the time. But they didn't observe evolution. They can't test evolution, and they sure don't have repeatable results of evolution. So it's not a fact. It's not even science. It shouldn't be in a science book. But it is. And that's the start of what's fooling the kids. It's in the science book. It must be science, right? And so we hear all the time Well, I believe in science instead of your silly religious story. Well, but the problem is the evolution story is not science. We just went over the scientific method. It doesn't conform to the scientific method. It's not science. But it's in the science book. That's the first thing that fools the kids. Then the next thing that fools the kids is that they keep repeating over and over and over again something that is not a fact as if it were a fact. That fools the kids. It indoctrinates them into believing in evolution and deep time, which is the secular origin story. Okay? So that's a problem. So folks, if you think that your kids and our kids, the community's kids, should not be indoctrinated and fooled into believing into this secular origin story called evolution and deep time, talk to your superintendent of schools about it. Talk to the board members about it of the school district and tell them that you think something should be done to at least give the kids a fair and balanced approach of presenting this information to them. When only one side is given of a two-sided story and it's presented as a fact, then that's indoctrination or brainwashing. It's certainly not science, so we need to be really careful of what we're about there. Okay, now here's just a few more examples. Now I could give you hundreds of examples in these 3 chapters. I'm just going to give you a few because we don't have much time. During the Cenozoic era, mammals evolved adaptations that allowed them to live on land and in water and even in the air. Okay, that's a good story, but there's no evidence, and it's not a fact, but it's told as if it were a fact to the kids. I hope you see the problem there. During the Cenozoic, mammals evolved adaptations that allowed them to live in various environments. Okay, a good story, but it's not a fact. Why are you saying it like it's a fact? And why is there no evidence? What is your evidence? In the oceans, marine mammals such as whales and dolphins evolved. Okay, so they're clearly saying, even though this is supposed to be stated as a theory, they're saying it as a fact, constantly. Grasses evolved, providing a food source that encouraged the evolution of grazing mammals. Really? Well, where's your evidence? And you know, there's a great saying. It goes like this: nothing is too absurd to be believed if it is repeated often enough. And folks, this is repeated often to kids in their public education courses. It's estimated that by the time you graduate from public school, you're going to be told that evolution is a fact, deep time is a fact, at least 10,000 times. If you're told something that many times, you're going to believe it, especially if it's coming from a textbook and a teacher, which are people that they should be able to believe. It's a textbook and a teacher or positions of authority. And we want to be able to believe our authority figures. But when they're telling us a lie, we don't know that it's a lie, we're going to be indoctrinated into believing anything. And as C.J. Chesterton, the great British theologian, once said, once you stop believing in God, you don't believe in nothing, you believe in anything. And folks, evolution is that anything that they're going to be believing in. Okay? And you know, George Wald was a biology professor from Harvard, a Nobel laureate, very famous biologist. He said, one has only to contemplate the magnitude of the task to concede that spontaneous generation of living organisms is impossible. I choose to believe that which I know is impossible rather than to accept the unthinkable special creation. So he knows that evolution is impossible. He concedes that fact. But he believes it anyway because he doesn't want to believe in special creation, in a God that created. That is so sad. Psalms 11:3 says, "If the foundations be destroyed, what shall the righteous do?" And folks, creation is the foundation for Christianity, okay? The reason that it's the foundation is because if there was no literal Adam and Eve in a literal garden that actually created the first literal sin that separated us from God, requiring a Redeemer to bring us back to God, then there's no need for a Redeemer. You see, without that first sin in a real garden by real people that God created, there's no need for a Redeemer. So there goes Jesus. Jesus is out of work. He doesn't have a job anymore because he's just not needed to redeem us back to God, because that's where that separation occurred in the garden during that first original sin. So it is important. It's not a secondary issue, as some people think. And it can be divisive, but it is foundational, so it needs to be dealt with. Now, there's 6 types of evolution, folks, and let's go over those real quick. First, there's cosmic evolution, and that is the origin of time, space, and matter, and we often call that the Big Bang. Next, there's chemical evolution, and that is the origin of higher elements from hydrogen. Next, there's stellar and planetary evolution, and that's the origin of stars and planets. And then there's organic evolution. That's the origin of life. That's the one we usually talk about. And then there's macroevolution, and that's a changing from one kind of animal into another kind of animal. That goes along with the biological organic evolution. And then there's microevolution, which is what creationists believe in, and everyone believes in because it's observable. And that's the number one first part of the scientific method. It has to be observed. Microevolution is the variations within a kind. And only that has been observed. That's real science. The others types of evolution are not real science. Darwin himself said, "A fair result can be obtained only by fully stating and balancing the facts and arguing on both sides of each question." So Darwin says, let's look at both sides, all the sides. Let's look at it, at the whole story. But what we've had in the last 60 years in public education has been showing the kids only one side, pretending like it's the only side, and present it as a fact. Kids don't have a chance then, do they, to believe in really anything else. Okay, Goebbels said, "Let me control the textbooks and I will control the state." He also said, "If you tell a lie long enough, loud enough, and often enough, the people will believe it." And he said, "People are more likely to believe a big lie than a small one." And evolution is that big lie that they're telling these days. And the kids are swallowing it hook, line, and sinker. The Big Bang Theory began with Belgian astronomer George Latimer. And he taught that the matter that exploded was a few light years in diameter. By 1965, that figure was reduced to 275 million miles. By 1972, it was reduced to 71 million miles. By 1974, it was reduced to 54,000 miles. And by 1983, it was reduced to a trillionth the size of a proton. Well, that's so small we can't even imagine what it would be like. We sure can't measure anything that small. And now they're saying that nothing exploded at all. So we've gone to complete absurdity. But you know what? Nothing is too absurd to be believed if it was repeated enough. And boy, is that repeated a lot. Nothing exploded and poof, here we are. And we believe that kind of nonsense when we hear it in a fairy tale, and we wouldn't believe it, right? So when we read in the fairy tale that the princess kissed the frog and the frog turned into a prince, all of a sudden, snap of a finger, we know it's a fairy tale. But when the frog turns into the prince over millions of years, it's science? I don't think so. It's still a fairy tale. Okay, we went over the Big Bang, a little bit about that. Let's look right now at the illustration of this box that I brought along with me. Here's a box. Where did the box, and this represents the universe, folks, this box right here. Where did the box come from? There's only two possibilities. Either it made itself or there was a box maker. Over the last 100 years, science has come to be defined as only allowing natural processes to be presented, to be examined. The students that are taught this way teach it more strongly, and their students teach it even more strongly, until at some point they become blinded to any other viewpoint. Only evidence that supports the idea that the box made itself becomes the only thing shown, written about in the scientific literature, presented in textbooks. This is censorship because you are not even allowing the consideration of the other possibility, and you're not showing the problems with the belief that the box made itself. If life started on its own, that would break the known scientific laws of biogenesis. Biogenesis, just to remind you, we went over this last time, is the scientific law that says life only comes from pre-existing life. It's not created. It can't poof into existence by itself. It would have to have a creator. We know, based on science and observation, it could not make itself, but the students are never told this. There was an experiment in 1952 done by Professor Urey and Miller, those professors. The most common form of life is a protein molecule. Proteins are made up of amino acids. There are 20 different amino acids that form the proteins. In the experiment, they took methane, ammonia, water, and hydrogen, put them in a circular tube contraption, added electrical sparks to combine to form a few amino acids. They left oxygen out because they knew that no amino acids could form with it present. Also, every time the experiment was done, it got both right-handed and left-handed amino acids, but life only uses the left-handed ones. For life to exist, and let me just mention here that, I don't have my card here with me, I guess, on that. But 85% of what was formed in this experiment was tar. Only 2% was amino acids. Okay, for life to exist, the amino acids must be lined up in a very specific order for all 20 of them. Since evolution only has blind random chance, the average protein is 300 amino acids long. A cell has 1,000 different proteins. Just to get 10 of them right through random chance would be once every 10 trillion tries. To get a protein that was 300 amino acids long, which is the average, is the essence of infinity, which means it's mathematically impossible. But students aren't shown this. Folks, we believe in math every other time except for when it comes to evolution, when math shows that it's mathematically impossible to have happened. That's when we stop believing in math, at one point. Does that raise a red flag to you? Because it sure does to me. And you know, a pen has 6 different parts, a ballpoint pen. If you put it into a can with energy, say a firecracker, that explodes, the pen doesn't poof back together, does it? Everyone knows that couldn't happen. Censorship leaves out the obvious so that you can only eventually come to believe the impossible is true. Proverbs 18:17 says, any story sounds true until you hear the other side. But we're only giving the kids one side. I hope you can see that's a problem. They're only getting one side. They're not getting any of the other side. They're not even getting criticism of the one side they're getting. Any scientific criticism to show that there's problems with their theory that they present as fact. When you only show one viewpoint over and over again, your brain becomes conditioned to believe that's the framework of truth, so it must be true. It's believed because God is left out. Evolution is a faith, not science. The Christian faith is not a blind faith. The evidence is all around us. Okay? And I'm not talking about just evidence in nature. There's scientific evidences as well as archaeological evidences and logical evidences that show that Christianity is true. Let's look a little bit at the age of the earth. Well, you know what? That's a big topic. We might not even have time to go into that topic because there's lots and lots of different ways of showing that the earth and the universe are young and not old, not millions or billions of years old. And none of those hundreds and hundreds of scientific ways to determine the age of the earth are shown to the kids because they don't want them thinking that their secular creation story might not be true. And that's what would happen if they did show them some of that evidence. Okay, let's look at some of the missing links that has been brought up throughout the last 150 years here and to see how that panned out for evolution. Well, in 1891, a Dutch doctor, Jean Davaux, discovered Java Man. The fossil evidence was a skull fragment, and a year later, and 50 feet away, they found a human leg bone and a few teeth. The skull and teeth turned out to be from a gibbon, and the femur turned out to be human. Still claimed to be the missing link. Before he died, Davaux admitted that he found two human skulls in the same location as what he was claiming to be this missing link, and that the skull fragment was from a gibbon. So fakes and frauds are being presented and put out there to the kids for supposed evidence for this evolution story. Piltdown Man was discovered in southern England in 1912. He was claimed to be 500,000 years old. He had an ape-like jaw and a human-like skull. In 1950, a test was developed that measured the amount of fluorides that had been absorbed into the bones from the soil, which was applied to this skull, and they got a maximum date of 1,000 years. When it was discovered that the bones had been treated with iron salts to look older than it actually was, and that the teeth had been filed down to make it look older, they realized finally that it was a fake. It wasn't 500,000 years old, it was 1,000 years maybe. But it was, again, the jawbone of an orangutan and the skull of a modern human. So there's another fake and a fraud stacked up for evolution. The Nebraska Man was built from one tooth in 1912. A tooth that was found in the ground in Nebraska. And artists created pictures of the Nebraska Man and his wife that went worldwide. And then they discovered a little later on that this tooth was actually from an extinct pig. Another fake for proof of evolution. Then Peaky Man came in 1922 as well by Dr. Davidson Black, who says he discovered some skull fragments, a skull and some jaw fragments and some teeth. But all the evidence was lost during World War II. So we only have 3 generations of people describing what was found, and each description becomes more like the missing link. The cave where these fragments were found and 20 human skulls were found in a section above the lower cave. So humans are existing with Peking Man and all these in the lower cave, because now we're talking about Peking Man. Okay, this is and all those in the lower cave had their skulls opened so the brains could be drained. So it was evident that men were eating these apes and discarding their bones. Okay, so all the bones were, and the skulls, the 20 skulls, had their heads cracked open and the contents drained. So they were eating the brains. And as you know, probably from watching Indiana Jones, that some cultures do that still today. And then there's Neanderthal man. And their cranial capacity is greater than modern man. The first one was found in Neander Valley in Germany, and it was bent over. And it was immediately declared a missing link. But later, others were found that were not bent over, so the bones were x-rayed and discovered that he had arthritis. And he's now classified as Homo sapiens, or modern man. So another X out for missing links to man. And now let's look at Ramapithecus. It was discovered in 1932. Found a jaw fragment and some teeth. 40 of these creatures have now been discovered, and it has been determined to be an orangutan or a similar creature. So this was taken out of the textbooks for a while, but in 1970 it was put back in the textbooks and just renamed Civipithecus. Australopithecus, discovered in 1924, where it was a skull. The skull is ape-like, but the teeth are man-like. The brain size is 1/3 of modern man. The jaw is identical to modern apes. It's a 3.5-foot ape or monkey. It looks like, most looks like an orangutan. So not a missing link. And then Lucy has been hailed as the best missing link between apes and humans. Discovered in 1974 by Donald Johanson, it was a 3.5-foot tall ape. It may have walked upright. The pygmy chimp walks upright almost all the time, still today. The knee was found a mile away and 210 feet deeper than the rest of the bones. And by the way, only 35% of the bones have been found for Lucy. So it's not a full skeletal bone sample there. The hand is identical to a pygmy chimp. No skull was found, and probably a composite of different animal bones there that they found to make Lucy. Again, not a missing link, just an ape creature, 3.5-foot tall. A bone was found that resembled the shoulder bone of a chimp, but it had the curve of a bone that indicated upright walking. But in 1984, it was revealed to be a dolphin's rib, and nicknamed Flipperpithecus. Why would they assume that a bone is a missing link? Do you think maybe they really want to find some evidence to support their theory? Also in 1984, a skull fragment was found and declared to be the oldest human fossil ever found in Europe. It turned out to be a 4-month-old donkey. You know, evolutionists are so desperate to find evidence for their theory that they'll say anything is a missing link. Eventually they're found out, though, and it has to be discarded, at least for a while. I do have a lot more stuff here on the age of the earth, and we're going to get into that hopefully next program. So come back for that. And every time I want to show you one good resource that you might want to get. This here is the seminar, Christian seminar from Kent Hovind, and from a scientific perspective. And there's 7 DVDs here that give you a tremendous amount of information on age of the earth and creation science. So please, if you're looking for something good to get, you can go to Kent Hovind's website and get this. And you can order this, or you can even order it from me if you want to. This is the Creation Science Seminar, and it's really well priced. And there's 18 hours of excellent information on there on creation science that you'll get. And I also have quite a bit of DVDs and books and charts of creation science that you're able to purchase. Just give me a call at any time at 771-1218. I'd love to talk to you. Also, I collect email addresses and notify people about the local creation events on their email. So if you'd like to send that to me, I'll be glad to get that out to you. And also, we have a real fine engineer here, and he's going to put on the screen the different websites for the main creation ministries out there. And there's a lot of great ones, but these are the big ones. And they have wonderful resources as well, and lots of information on their websites. So you can learn more just by going to their websites. And so Kent Hovind's is drdino.org for that creation seminar series that I just mentioned. So anyway, I sure hope that you learned something today about creation science, and I hope to see you back next week when I'll have Mike Bird here on as a guest. And if you have any questions or comments, you just give me a call. 771-1218 is my number. I hope to see you next time. God bless. Bye-bye.